Howdys and salutations, y'all. We're actually here right at 8 today, getting started, jumping right into it. So, where we left off, I'll go ahead and huck this stuff in chat too. Yeah, that's right, we got a bit more energy today. We're actually launching in. So, right in chat, assuming I don't turn my own mouse off, so much for that energy, but we're going to keep it going. Today we are continuing on Art Fight, which if you don't know is an art competition extravaganza. Let's go with that. I think that's the tone better. Basically, it sorts a bunch of artists onto two teams. You post a couple of your own characters, everyone posts theirs, and then you draw art of the other team's characters as attacks, so to speak, to get yourself points, and to get you practice drawing different types of characters, and to get other people interesting fan art of their characters. And likewise, they'll do it back to you. You can also do friendly fire if you want to do some stuff against people on your own team. Maybe you know them, maybe there's just a piece you have to do. But either way, yeah, it's an absolute blast. So picking up, yesterday we worked out some line work. I'm still refining this art style a little bit. Right now, it mainly exists in 3/4 view, which is a flaw in and of itself. But it definitely still needs a little bit of tweaking. However, we are going to continue with this one. We sorted out the line work yesterday to a satisfactory level. Maybe not perfect, but you know, good enough. Good enough to look decent. Good enough to be something I'd be willing to share, perhaps. I mean, I'm sharing it regardless because we're live. But, sharing or no, here it is. Today we are going to get the flats in. We've already started those a little bit. I'll unhide them in just a second so we can continue on that process, because we may need a different background color, maybe a soft gray to contrast this. Still a warm gray though, I think. Or if it's a cool gray, not too harsh of a cool gray, not like gunmetal steel. So that is sort of where we will be picking up. We're going to continue the flats, and assuming I don't get horrendously caught up in flatland, we will eventually get onto shading. I don't think it's going to take terribly long. Flats usually go comparatively quickly. Shading I can end up spending a little more time on, especially for just a headshot like this. Even with that amount of detail in the hair, the flats are going to be easy. The shading's where that gets a wee bit complicated. But we're going to jump right in, and just to make sure, if you ever want to throw in chat current target, that's our command, and it'll show you who we are currently drawing art for. This particular piece is by Sakura. That's right, I can actually say it now. This character is Huan. We are going to be continuing this art piece and hopefully get it wrapped up today. If not, truthfully, I may wrap it up Wednesday just so we can go ahead and post it, because I don't want, like, Art Fight ends in less than a week now, and I don't want to push it too far. And I want to make sure that we get to, you know, do a couple of pieces on here. But if that doesn't happen, we'll finish it on Thursday, and we'll jump into another one for the Friday stream, and then we may have a Saturday stream this week. Truthfully, if we do, it may end up being Stardew Valley, because it's a little bit easier, and it'd be something to, yeah, it's something that's easier to engage a few other folks in too. Maybe get some other people on. I'm not making any promises, but there's a chance. But I should really talk to people before I actually even hinted anything of that sort. So, we are going to jump into coloring this, though. That's all in the future. That's Thursday, that's Saturday. Art Fight's going to be over on Monday, but if there's any lingering stuff, we're still going to finish it, because I'm not just getting halfway through an art piece and dunking it in the well. Assuming I have a well. I don't have a well. Maybe I should get a well. Not today. Let's actually jump into this. And we'll get started. So, we've got a little bit of the flats on. Now, I know this looks insane. Like, why is the face just a blurb like this? But each of these flats is a new layer, and they're going to go over the layer below. I should probably clean up the eyes a tad bit. Just a wee bit. Let's see if we can. Not the eraser. So, the way that I'm doing flats, and you'll see the layers. As we do more layers, this edge will get cleaned up. The actual hair will be on top of it, not behind it. Obviously, the collar will actually exist, such and such, things like that. But I do want to clean up the eyes a little bit before we jump in there too far. So I'm going to use the method we've been using for flats, before I wander too far away from that topic. Is basically, we've done our line work, we've got that on a separate layer, which is actually a screen layer, because I did it in green and it didn't show up on the hair. So I had to use the screen layer, so it turned into this sort of white filter above it. Looks kind of like chalk art, which is fun. And then I just fill in each of the main color blocks, going from the backmost layer to the frontmost, until we've got flat colors, no shading, no, like, real details, and definitely no line work. Just these blocks. And to do that, I use the selection pen. So we're not actually using any sort of like drawing pen or pencil or like ink or stamps or brushes or anything of that sort. We're just using the select tool, which why the heck am I selecting the hair? That's not where the eyes go, even on a good day. I mean, unless they've gotten way out of line. Let's sort of clean up a little of our edge work on this. Not going to go too crazy on it, but those ones I felt were sufficiently obvious that they were detracting. And this, you know, it kind of hints at a bridge of a nose, but it also might be a little too much. So if we may come back in a little later and adjust that one. We will see. Also, just a heads up, we've had some very minor audio issues recently with the headset cutting out. If it does, please let me know in chat. I mean, obviously you don't have to if you don't want to. You're welcome to let me just sit here and have, like, it only cuts over like a 1/10 of a second, so it solves itself. But just a heads up if that happens. Yeah, you don't have to say anything in chat. You're welcome to use the alert command. You're welcome to just, you know, be invisible and do nothing ever. You know, this is something that you're supposed to enjoy. It's not supposed to feel like you're in a classroom being called on to participate. Obviously, you're welcome to. Like, backseating is encouraged. Tell me what I'm doing wrong on this. You know, otherwise it might take me who knows how long to figure it out. So, you know, we'll get back to that when we get back to that. But for now, feel free to just lounge around. Don't have to do anything. It's a pretty chill situation. So, important thing I forgot to grab on this that I'm going to pull up. We may pull it up in the same stream window. It was getting a little in the way last time, so we'll see if we end up if I keep it off view. But I'm going to jump into Art Fight. We're going back to Art Fight. Yeah, that's right. I'm not afraid to show my browser on stream. So this is my profile if you want to visit Siphimir, by the way, if you want to do any attacks. We've got Salt, which we worked on last week. Fun little character. There's some full body refs and stuff back in there. But what we're actually doing is I've bookmarked this character, Huan, and this is the reference we're going off of. So obviously it's a different style. I really like their style. That's part of why I want to do it. One of these days, so one activity I'm going to do a little bit later, and I promise we'll get to the actual art soon. But they're called style studies, basically, or at least that's what I call them. And they're sort of like the master studies of old, but you basically just pick an artist whose style you really like, and you're not tracing, but just trying to use them as a reference, and not just as a reference to draw their character, but to see how they're doing their style. Try to mimic the line work, try to mimic the shading and things like that, and see if you can do a few of their characters. Obviously, credit where you're getting it from. Don't just post the stuff as your own work. Character design is an art in and of itself. But once you've got the hang of that, then you can try drawing other characters in that style or incorporating some of the elements and techniques of that style into your own. There's one style I really love that relies on super distinct line weights, which is not something I'm good at necessarily. Oh, wait a second. I wonder if I can... Oh, maybe there's a win-win situation here. I just remembered that I'm using OBS, and that allows me to do browser captures. So let me see if I can get the reference. It would help if I actually had the reference URL. Okay, so let's see. This. Paste it there. Click OK. Hey, can y'all see that on stream? Hopefully you can. Again, you don't have to answer. But we'll just sort of, well, we'll keep the reference a decent size. Again, this is not my art. This is by Sakura. By the current target. Excellent, excellent work there. So we'll just sort of keep that in view. We'll stick with the reference that we're using right now. And, yeah, I wonder if I can adjust the aspect ratio on this a little bit. Ba-doop. Sorry, this is only week, what, 3 of streaming, and we're only on day 2 of week 3. So I do apologize, I am still figuring a few of these things out, although let me tell you, it's already going a heck of a lot better than the first stream, where we had no audio for 45 minutes because my headset wouldn't connect. That was an exciting day. Exciting's one word for it. Maybe if I do this. Hey! There we go. Okay, we're still going to stick to the one character, though. That's Huan by Sakura. Obviously, if you want more details or you want to visit their page on Art Fight and see where they keep all their art, by all means, that's in chat. We've got commands for it. That one would be current target. Okay, so next layer. Now that we've got our reference for colors, I think that we're going to do... Couple options. I think what we ought to do right now is I'm actually going to focus on the clothes. There's going to be 3 layers there. Let's start with clothes red, I think. I'm just going to label them by color. I like to keep my layers organized and labeled. Obviously, that's not, required, but I find it makes life easier. But I also don't want to spend like 2 weeks organizing and hyper, because I absolutely am capable, more than capable of spending far too long reorganizing that and not actually drawing. As you've probably seen with the amount of time we've spent on this stream not drawing. We're 13 minutes in already. So let's actually get going with this. This is just basically a headshot. I'm not going for full detail on the attacks because my work pace is not quite fast enough to do that and get through more than one. So where we're currently at, I'm trying to work within my own skill limitations. Okay, this needs to be in front of the skin. It's complicated. Because the skin layer is behind it. But this part needs to be in front of it, that part needs to be behind it. That's the complicated part. We'll go in, I'll clean up some of the corners a little bit. We did make this character much bigger. I tend to draw way too small while I'm figuring things out because I don't use the whole canvas for it. So we zoomed this one out a little bit. Another neat control that we learned. One of those benefits of digital art you can't get with physical. Not that I'd have to zoom out a physical one necessarily because I wouldn't have pixelation issues to worry about. But there is such a thing as drawing it so small that you cannot possibly draw a face that is recognizable. Or at the very least you can't draw a face that isn't, just a smiley face, little half circle and 2 dots. So I've done that. So that's one of the benefits of trying to learn these physical art, or not physical. As much as I love physical art, that's where my experience actually is. It's not necessarily, like, there are perks to digital too. Not to mention streaming it, obviously. Significant perk. Okay, let's see. That's kind of an orangey red we've got on the ref. We'll pull this a little over, not quite that orange, but yeah, somewhere in this range. And we're not getting full saturation. It's like a little muted. I think we're gonna live here. I don't know why I'm bothering with the fill tool. There's one built into the select. But yeah, we'll start with that. If we hide the if we hide the sketch layer, it's a little rough around the edges. Let's see if we can't clean that up just a tad bit. This is one of the few times I'll actually use like a. Guess I ought to use the darn pen. Okay, fine, G pen. I'm not a huge fan of the pens. I haven't gotten the hang of making them taper in a way that doesn't look horrible. So that is something that I need to practice, so we will use them again, even no matter how much I dislike them. Not that one. I do love undos. Undos are such a nice feature. Wish there was an easier undo in real life than erasers. Not just for art either. Like, there's a lot of things where it'd be handy. Although having to live with your decisions is beneficial at times too. Oh jeepers, the vector eraser is great for vectors, but real pixely here. Oh, and this is massively too large. Whoops. And it has the wrong shift setting. So the hotkeys on this are set dependent on the pen you're using, which for the most part is fine. But occasionally it's a pain if you've got like a hotkey for something unrelated, like switching to eraser, or switching like the size of the cursor here. It'd be nice if you could just set that across all of them all at once, and there probably is a way. CSP seems to have good settings controls like that, but it doesn't necessarily make it easy to find them. We'll start with that. The soulless eyes are still staring at me. I'd like to get a little more detail going, so they'll stop doing that. They're going to haunt me until we get pupils in there, and like actual eyelashes and such like that. And again, we are going lineless, but that doesn't mean like there won't be some like thin linear-ish forms, but we are really trying to focus on the form rather than like a specific line itself. Sometimes with the face it's hard to avoid, but we'll do as much as we can with shadows. Okay, next layer, I think above the red, it's kind of below the beigey tone. Okay, and so we're going to stick to normal raster layers. That's just your normal layer where you tell the canvas, put a pixel here, make it this color. Simple as that. Obviously, there's more it can do, but like raster layers, it doesn't care what the pixels represent. It's just each pixel is that. I don't think clothes equal gold, but that's, you know, I am going to be finicky about it, so help me. Nobody can tell me otherwise. I'm allowed to be finicky about that on my stream. But let's see. I'd probably let the red get a little away from me there, but that's okay. It adds like a natural bump to it anyway, so I kind of don't hate that. So this one I'm trying to just outline it first. And we'll build from there. I do want to actually emphasize that there's like a little bit of front and back on this. I don't know that there is in the original ref, but I think it adds some character to this style, which loses some of the other detail from the original ref. So that's what I'm going to try to stick with. Okay, and I know the gold doesn't come all the way down, so we'll probably fill it out around here somewhere. Also, by the way, it's funny, on DMCA, this playlist, which has a bunch of super recognizable songs, no DMCA strikes. I've had like one. The other playlist, which was labeled DMCA free music and had a bunch of music that I'd never heard of, like 2 or 3 in one video. I'm like, well, okay. Granted, the more I looked into that other playlist, I'm pretty sure they stole some of that music, so I am more than happy to be away from it. I was going to need to dump it regardless. So we don't steal other people's art. That is not okay. You can use it as reference, sure, but you ought to credit people when you do that. And more importantly, like, you can't just trace it. Oops, sorry about that. I hope that wasn't a bad bump sound to anyone. I literally bumped my own microphone. Okay, let's see if we can't get this gold. Gold's always a hard one to eyeball, because gold is really just like dark yellow. Like, not as dark yellow as brown, which is also dark yellow. And so golds end up looking brown unless you've got like kind of a luster on them or you get just the right tone. This one's kind of a softer, kind of, not quite that soft, but it's somewhere in this world, I think. Like, see, that looks beige when you look at it in isolation, but let's see how it looks when it's filled. Still beige. Let's see if we can figure out what exactly is off from the original ref. Besides the fact that it looks weirdly translucent because of the fold. Let's look at it without the line work and see how it... It's pretty close. It's like a tiny bit too... I need it to lighten the hue and then darken the actual, like, not saturation, but whatchamacallit. Nope, that actually made it worse. Okay, we're sticking with this one. It's pretty good. Obviously, we need, like, a little bit of cleanup. Not with this color. Oh dear. Let's get this one back in. And once again, I know this has color palette features. I have not figured out how to use them in a way that isn't horrendously tedious and slow yet, but that is something I would love to learn. So anyone who wants to throw that factoid at me, by all means, I am welcome to it. Or a factoid that's like, no, don't use that tool, it's actually terrible. Also open to that fact. I genuinely just don't know. Because again, when this stream is learning with Siphimir, I do mean we're both learning this. Like, we're figuring this out together as we go. And that is a-okay, that's sort of the point of it. I think it's more fun to learn something like this together. I was going to need to learn it regardless, so why not share that with folks? See if we can maybe both learn some things, pick up tips and tricks and ideas from each other. And also, for people who only see, like, finished masterful digital works and arts, here's watching, hopefully, how we get there, but at the very least seeing someone else who's just going for it. Because I assure you, I am not at that level yet. Even my pencil and paper stuff, although it's better than the digital work right now, it's still far from masterful. We want a tiny bit of the red rim to still show at the top. Less so on this one. I want it to sort of cover until we get around the edge. Oops. object to transform, but there is. We've selected a thing. Oh, whatever. Let's do this once more. So full gold here, full gold there. Then around here, when we're coming to the front, slight red line, slight red line, slight red line. We'll fix that. That's fixable. Hey, it's the Bowser Man. Okay. And then we're going to use the erase selection tool, which is a wonderful feature, to just deselect this little whoopsie. Goodbye, little whoopsie. And boom, gold. We are, well, technically golden, I suppose. Again, it's really kind of a... Gold isn't that far from mustard yellow. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's a little far, but not crazy far. Okay, let's sharpen some of these edges. Delete that bit. Delete that bit. And again, if we had slightly better layering... There we go. That's why it wasn't working. I was deleting the selection, not the stuff contained in it. You know, if we were going more in depth with the layering, we'd probably have a front and a back half of this collar piece, where one was in front of the skin and one was behind it, because that's how, you know, clothes actually work. However, we're not quite doing that. I do think that I actually want to build this bit. Okay, that's too linear. We need to come at it with a curve. We can fill this section out a little bit. A little bit of trial and error on this piece, but that's part of why it's fun. It's not like trial and error in math where it's just right or wrong. In this, you're just sort of like refining it and trying to get it to a point where it looks sufficiently good. That is my only goal, is can we get this looking sufficiently good? We could actually share it with someone and they wouldn't be, you know, insulted at our depiction of their character. Which, you know, I'll be honest, I'm not certain we can, but I'm gonna try. And I'm gonna share it regardless, because hopefully they'll just appreciate that someone made art of their character. Although I think someone did beat us to this particular character. But we can still be number 2. No shame in being that. I suppose that depends on what the definition of... You know what? This is a conversation that I'm going to have never. We're just going to move on. So, back to that. We've got a little more gold line work. I wasn't kidding. I really am just moving on. A little more gold line work there. Let's pop this up to 8 maybe, I think. Got... Again, I say line work. I want to make sure that we're actually getting forms. So let's actually scoot this over a little bigger. Let's see if we can't get more of a face view. Or specifically a collar view. Yeah, it's pretty blurry on this one, but it does sort of taper to the point. I believe it's supposed to be a tie of sorts, like tied off. So, I'm going to go ahead and get the main shape of it. I'm going to go ahead and reiterate sort of like a soft curve around this piece so that this end is bigger than that end. And then I'm going to use the erase selection, and one of my favorite little techniques that I learned from, I'm sure I read it somewhere else too, but the time it stuck was from one of them Rubber Ross Gartic phone streams, which are fun, but like occasionally spicier than I might be able to recommend on this channel. But we're going to just taper the points, because if you run 2 circles into each other, eventually you can actually, like, if you're erasing with the circle, you can get a harder point even if you don't have a pointed tool. Which is really, really handy sometimes. Even though the erase is clearly more pixely. I wonder, I need to figure out what's going on with some of the tool resolutions. Oh, I actually have a guess. That. This setting right here, anti-aliasing. Come on now. Okay. Well, I need to swap tools anyway. So I try not to mess with the settings too much, partly because we're all learning here and I don't want it to become like some crazy opaque thing, and partly because I don't know what some of them do and I don't want to break it. But this one in particular, I have had to mess with anti-aliasing while I was testing some other stuff. So here, let's see. You can see this one's really pixely. I think that shows up on stream. But this one's nice and smooth. Okay. And we've got kind of our nice C's there. Little line workier than I usually go for, but I think it's worth it on this one. That said, these particular pixels are bothering me a tiny bit. As are these ones. Fun fact with the erase tool, if you're using it in an area with no selection and you don't have a selection, it just becomes a select tool. Yeah, see, now it's erase, but now it's select. Well, now. Most of the time it does that. I think since we'd already been doing some things, it whoops, wasn't liking it too much. There we go. That way we don't get that sort of residue. I feel like I'm just shaving this down a little bit. A sculpture thing than a drawing thing, typically. And sculpture is not something I'm ready to test out yet. Maybe 3D. I do enjoy the 3D modeling stuff. It's been a long time since I've done any of that, though. Holy cow. Back in the Maya days of school. So I will not be messing with that for a little bit, although I do hope to do some on stream at some point. I've made some real fun GIFs. Okay, what layer do we want to do next? We've spent more than enough time on that. I guess we need to wrap up the clothes layers. Let's do clothes. Beige. You know, for a long time I hated beige. I considered it my color nemesis. Because I thought it was a boring, bland, awful color. And I will stand by that in certain architectural settings. Beige walls can be just the worst. Give me, like, stinking neon green before you give me beige. Please don't. But, like, a lot of the beige ones look just kind of nasty because they end up looking like a dirty white in an architectural setting. But in art, and if used, you know, in a smart way and kept clean, it's actually really, really a nice color. Because it not only does it support a lot of the other colors, like the greens. I've zoomed in and you can't even see half some of my drawing. Well, we'll still be able to see this part. Maybe we pull the ref over a tad bit. Or shrink it a tad. I realize I'm covering up maybe a little too much. So we've got corner face peeking out here. Then we'll... I guess we'd really want this in the top, but then I've made the window too big for that. I can adjust window size, I think. I did it earlier. Surely I can do it again. Oops. Oops. Y'all up for a very, very blurry model? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe let's not. Let's fix that. It was what? 600 by 800, I believe. Way too big now. Oh dear. Pardon my mishaps. I am still getting the hang of these tools. Mondo face. Come on. Keep shrinking down. Keep shrinking down. Keep scaling this down. A little bit smaller. Okay. Did I make it 800 by 600 instead of 600 by... Solved once again. Okay, small face. Reference face. And again, seriously, I know it's been 30 minutes, so in case someone else popped by, this is not my original art there. That is the person we're attacking an art fight. Feel free to throw the art fight command in chat if you want more details there, but I am going to go ahead and throw current target in there. Because this is the original artist, Sakura. And their art is awesome. So I wanted to, we've got to give big shout outs there. We're not here to steal art. We're not here to take credit for other people's art. We're here to make fan art. And that is what I intend to do. So, let's get our selection tools nice and big and get back in here. So we need sort of broad swaths. Like that green there might have to go. That I'm going to have to trim a little bit away from. That's okay. We need to sort of get the rim here, which is actually that part red or that part's red. Okay. Let me do some, let's just start this over, methinks. Okay. We want to keep that red rim. We want to keep this piece going right up until the collar. And then same deal on this side. And then we want to fill out here. And this we can just sort of play fast and loose with. Probably just going to go for like a simple curve there. The fact that it runs off the bottom is a little amateurish. We'll see if we can't clean that up at the end, but we don't need to clean it up right now. Yeah, like that's the bottom of the canvas. So, oops. kind of like the implied taper that has, so I'm going to try to keep those curves, actually. The sort of wrinkles and folds on it. Now let's see how well this beige turns out. I think that's a good one. It matches the reference. It's a tad darker, but it matches pretty well relative to the face. Again, this is why we may need to adjust the background, but I don't like drawing on a pure white drawing surface. I don't know that it gives eye strain necessarily. I just find that it's like hard for creativity. Like literally a blank white canvas, like psychologically, it psychs me out. I'm like, I can't put anything here. Not only is it perfect and clean and pure, but also, like, it's just the symbolic empty canvas. There's nothing here. There's no starting point. I'm sure in a pinch I could put something there, but if there's one thing I can definitely do more easily than that, it's overthink it. So instead of even giving myself a chance to overthink it, I'm just going to not give myself that opportunity. Okay, let's see how this is looking without the line work. Because this needs to be able to hold its own without line art, because we're not keeping the lines at the end. Let's sort of... Oops. Let's sort of fill in a little bit here. I want to make sure there's not green visible there, because even a little bit can be really obvious sometimes. You never know. There we go. I guess if we're going to do it like this, though, I need to go back to the red layer and make sure that we fill this whole section in. Not with beige, though. With this color. There we go. Okay. So then, I think that's the clothes sorted. Let's move to... You know, I'm actually going to do the inner ears, because I think the front hair is going to have to cover those. Ooh. We're going to have to fix that. Okay, but let's go ahead and do these inner ears. So we'll get the line work back for that. Okay, this is going to be kind of a softer pink, so we don't really want to be in the hot pinks necessarily. And sort of pull over here. This is still a pretty hot pink, isn't it? But, like this pale pink, I want a bit more in this direction. Let's start with this one. Let's see how we're feeling about it. And let's get selected. Oh, this one's already going to be a finer point, huh? Okay. Because there's a lot of interior ear. You know what? Nope, this part's going to be part of the front green. This is back green. So, like, I'm going to try. So at the end, I'm going to clean up a whole bunch of this background green. I was just trying to get the silhouette. Wow, not the silhouette. Silhouette. New D&D character name? Silo? I'm not above that. I'm a dungeon master. You know how many NPCs I have to name? I am always looking for names, even if they're terrible. Okay. Like, I genuinely almost named a character Fredmud the other day, because I couldn't think of anything else. Like, can you imagine that poor character's fate? Be memorable, though. People are not going to forget a Fredmud. You don't meet a lot of those. For good reason. Okay, so I'm not worried about this side, because we'll have a front hair section, basically, that's going to help define the outline of this piece and help cover up some of these ears. I'm going to go ahead and get kind of the bigger loop and just sort of scoop out in here a little bit, clean up those curves. And then I do want to just make sure that we got this pretty well selected. Let's fill that in with the pink. Yep, okay, I was afraid of that. It's still a little too hot of a pink. I think even moving this way doesn't solve that issue necessarily. It just whites it out. We need to actually move sort of over here. Oh, I moved back this way a little. Because this is you need a little less purple in the pink. Much as I like lilac colors, they're not really what we're looking for here. Move this back up this way. Nope, I don't want screen tones. Screen tones are an interesting form of shading. It basically just screens the tone over part of it. If you select something that needs shading and not something that is just your whole color, it's really nice and something I want to experiment with a little more. Not today, though. Okay, I think a little more white on this one and we'll actually be pretty... Not quite that much white. Pinks are a little tougher to eye in sometimes. I realize this doesn't quite match the original. It's a little bolder of a contrast with the hair, but we've also got slightly bolder hair. So I think it actually works well with it. If it doesn't, it's easy enough to change layer colors, although not to change the fact that I've drawn this on the wrong layer. Why didn't any of y'all stop me? I'm just kidding, you don't have to. We're gonna cut that. We're gonna make, it's gonna be its own new layer. We're calling it ears. We're putting it back up here. Okay. Deselect, and now this is its own layer, separate from the red. I'm so glad I learned that trick the other day, because I did not know that until very recently. Granted, I didn't know much of anything about most of this stuff until pretty recently. I've not been using CSP for a huge amount of time, and I've only been using it well for like a month and a half or so. I used Krita before this, which is free and surprisingly powerful for a free program. It's really wonderful. I highly recommend Krita if you're getting started. Got pretty much everything you could want and more, especially for like early beginning stuff. It absolutely has everything you want and more. It even's got some animation support to a basic level. So like great option. Although I hear Fire Alpaca is really good for early animation stuff too. So like you've got options there, shockingly. However, like there are some benefits of Clip Studio Paint, mainly the vector tools that are the reason I wanted to get here, and also because it came free with my tablet. I was like, you know, this is professionalist software that I could actually use for a long time. I think that's going to be, you know, let's give it a test, see if it's worthy investment, or if I can just go back to Krita. I have been loving the vector tools for the sketching, and I'm really liking the select options on this. They're a little more refined. So, like, it's going to be hard. It'd be hard to go back, for me to go back to Krita at this point, although, like, not impossible. It's still a great program. Could absolutely go back and use it at a pinch. The hard part would be relearning all the hotkeys and controls and stuff, because, my heavens. I found there was a great Udemy tutorial I found. By the way, if you've ever seen Udemy, never buy a course for like more than $12. They're, even if they're listed at $99, they're basically always on sale. So like just wait for a sale or clear your cache and it'll give you the first time user sale. Don't tell anyone I told you that. Don't do that. In fact, definitely don't do that. Ever. But if you happen to use Udemy and you didn't hear any tips from me about using Udemy, it is a really lovely program with some excellent courses. There's an excellent Intro to Krita course on there by someone named Weedy, which was not only fundamentally like a great intro to Krita, but just a great intro to like the differences of digital art and the types of things you need to look for in choosing canvases and choosing like a whole bunch of different pieces. So it's a wonderful course. Highly recommend that one. Realize we can't see the hair over the eye, but I do know it goes there. I also know I should use a bigger brush when I'm blocking in big areas like this, because otherwise I have to go do a lot of cleanup. But we need to get the edge details. And given how prominent this hair design is, and how much time we spent messing with it, I do want to make sure we try to capture that with as much accuracy as we can. Clear out some of this. How are we doing on time? 40 minutes? Okay, I'm going to see if we can get the flats done before the halfway mark. Because I'd love to get into the shading a little more today, like start tweaking some of that. Because shading does tend to take longer than the flats by a sizable margin, even when I'm not constantly talking. And I make no promises that I'll ever be not constantly talking, but on the off chance that I do ever stop, maybe I'll get faster at shading, I guess. Not entirely sure where that thought was going. I try not to... Not a big fan of dead space on the air. Or dead air on the space, I guess. Maybe I ought to have a little bit. I'm tripping over my words all of a sudden. And it's not a bad thing necessarily. I like chatting, explaining what I'm doing. I think it makes this a little more exciting for y'all. But also it makes it a little more exciting for me, and talking about my thoughts forces me to actually think them through all the way and not just store them in my head like a little, like, hoarding gremlin of ideas. Now I have to actually, you know, do things and, like, say things and think about them. Oh, wow, I'm on the eraser one again. Oh man, that was a pretty good line too. Or maybe it only was because I couldn't see it. Okay. So these lines I'm mainly worried, like I'm not too worried about the green silhouette over there. This actual front green layer is going to look really weird because, oh, actually I should go ahead and make sure I get the outline because otherwise that's going to mess with shading. Okay, I'm going to fill it out to look a little more normal. But just because the shading basically only applies on top of the layer you're currently looking at, and so if it's looking at just the front layer and the front layer is some weird scraggle line mess, that's going to be bad. But normally, I wouldn't worry because this front layer and the back layer are going to be the same color, so I could just leave open areas. As long as the back layer green is visible, then it would be fine. Let's see. By the way, if anyone wants to contribute, and again, obviously you don't have to say a word, I'm not your homeroom teacher. But if you do, I would like some feedback. How's the music audio? Like, that's not something that I have very good insight into. Not easy to test on my end unless I get use another Twitch account, which I can do, but oh, dagnabbit. Thank heavens you can undo that. But like, I don't know, I want to make sure that it's actually at a good audio level for y'all. So, you know, no requirements, you don't have to say a word, but if you want to, that would be a useful tip that I would appreciate greatly. Not to mention, you'd literally be the first person to chat on the stream. Like I said, we're still pretty new. So that's a milestone in its own right. I don't know if it's a milestone folks are that excited about, but it's a cool one, I think. I'm always excited when I'm one of the first people to find a new streamer. Granted, that doesn't happen much. But on occasion, there's ways. Now, I've become the new streamer that I'm hoping other people find. Although again, like, I'm not currently trying to do this as a job or anything. This is for fun, to sort of document the learning process, and to see if this is something that I can even do. Because, you know, maybe I can mess with some video editing or some other stuff in the future. And it might be fun. But I don't want to, you know, invest a massive amount of time in it and then, like, realize it's not for me or whatever. So this is sort of win-win. Gonna do a lot of experimenting. Okay. Need to also clean this one up a little bit. And I need to actually think about how I'm doing pen selections here. Because if we're gonna have hair layers, I want it to make sense and not just cover up all of the back. I keep saying back hair. That does sort of have a different connotation, doesn't it? But you know what I mean. The hair on the backmost layer. I feel like this is the song that yesterday tricked me into thinking that it was Eterna Forest, but it was in fact a different Pokemon Forest. Yeah, this ain't Eterna Forest. Okay, I like Eterna Forest. But this one is good too. I'm gonna start sort of... Oops, that should have been the erase selection pen that I was doing with that. Sort of start tracing out, because I want the front hair to actually be like the front hair lips and stuff. So I'll try to get this swing in it, but we don't necessarily need all of this section. Yeah, shading while having two flat layers that are the same color like this is going to be a little interesting. The shading on this hair in general is going to be a little interesting, so I'm excited to sort of, whoops, figure it out, but it is going to be a wee bit challenging, perhaps. I kind of wish that this particular twang of hair was actually on the back layer, but it needs to cover up those ear details, so I'm just gonna have it on the front layer and live with it on the front layer. And then over here again, we've sort of got, you want to grab the erase one, make it a tad smaller. Not quite that much, but I do want sort of like a little bit. This is the area where my actual rough designs are also getting a little bit vague. Like the original like line work sketch isn't super clear on some of these. Let's see. Filling in here. We'll just sort of... This particularly ominous cover of this song. But yeah, we're just going to keep on getting some of the stuff in here. As soon as I can get further away from this edge, because it's a really fine edge, we can move up to a larger brush. And also do a tiny bit of cleanup. So really, we don't need a ton. There's not a lot to compare this one against, so it's fine if it's a little off from the original design. Okay. We've got most of the upper hair selected. I'm not going to worry about this one because it really does actually just trail it. Well, it's supposed to trail in the front, isn't it? Okay. I'm going to leave clear the area where it meets the face because that part, it should be behind. I'm going to leave it as that. Maybe... No, I can't merge these layers in terms of shading. I've made myself a right little puzzle here, haven't I? But that's an opportunity to figure out what sort of process we want to use for this. Let's see. I'm checking chat. I'm just going to assume the music is absolutely perfect and I nailed it first try. If I don't see any responses, so it looks like I'm absolutely perfect and flawless in every way. Awesome! Oh, wait a second. What happened to the rest of the selection? Okay. Let's not deselect everything. Like a maximum selected area or something? Did I just hit the wrong hotkey? Yeah, one of the two. I don't think there's a maximum selected area or maximum selection vertices or anything of that sort. Because the auto select can do stuff way crazier than this if you let it. Which is something we could experiment with, but I've not... doing it by hand I find kind of relaxing, so I enjoy it. But also I haven't had amazing luck with it yet. It tends to get some weird contours and stuff in there that you have to go in and fix anyway, and I'd rather just go and do it right the first time if I've got the option. Okay, so let's select the green, and let's fill all this in. So for some areas, that's a huge change. For some areas, it's not at all. I'm going to go back to the backmost hair section, and I'm going to do just a tiny bit of cleanup now that parts of it are behind other things. Okay, so first off, we can deselect this. And I'm just going to make sure that the edges are all basically... Need to actually be selecting, not deselecting. Let's get a big old brush in here. This may be a tiny bit too big, but that's okay. And I'm just gonna toss all of the green under there. It doesn't need to, it's not super visible, but you can see it along edges and stuff like here. Let's just get rid of that. And let's go do the same thing for around the edges of the other ear where it's a bigger deal. I kind of like having like a tiny bit around the tip, but none of the rest of this. And even then, I may want to keep that stuff on one side. Yeah. See, that's better already. Yeah. We're just going to test that. I do still want to go in here and get rid of this line. Not important, and it doesn't really show up in the final drawing, but it still was bugging me, so I'm going to toss it. No reason to keep it around. Okay. So then, I think... Boy. We'll see if we get the flats done in time. I've gone and been a little picky with the hair again, as I've been doing with this character the whole time. Let's look at it without the line work, see how we're doing. That's getting to be a lot more recognizable now. And at least somewhat recognizable as the original character, too. Again, like, we'll have to find a higher contrast background, I think. Let's see if we... Maybe, like, a darker gold would be... No. I mean, it's definitely higher contrast, but, like... Not in a good way. Let's see about a soft blue, maybe. It'll match the eyes, it'll contrast the yellow not badly, and the green not badly. Maybe softer than that. Lighten it up a fair bit. Okay, yeah, I think that's probably better for what we're looking for. Oh, and I almost forgot to fix this. Let's go fix that right away. I'm on select tool. Yeah. Sort of improvise that a bit. Particular strand isn't looking amazing. I may blast it. Oh man, yeah, I need to clear that out on both of them, don't I? Okay, that's got like a little more character, and we've got a little bit of wonkiness around the edges. That's something we'll have to work on. So, a lot of characteristics are going to come in the shading, but there are certain pieces of the face that I actually do want to try to get from the line art. Well, not line art, what am I saying? The flats, the flats. One of those is a really important one that will also make this look a tad less creepy. Pupils. Let's fix this. We'll zoom back into the eyes. And we'll probably have like actually like a highlight on the pupils in the end. You can see one in the original drawing too, which is always fun. So for just a moment, I'm going to turn this from screen to multiply so we can see these again. And I actually want the pupils, they need to be behind the front hair anyway, and I want them to clip to the layer below so I can't accidentally draw the pupils outside of the eyes. Like right now, if I fill, well, it doesn't. Might help if let's try this. If I got the pupils on the wrong layer or something. Well, easiest way to test this without the selection tool, pen show up on them anywhere? Where does this show up anywhere? No, okay. Where am I mixing this up? Pupils should be clipping to the layer below, right? The reference layer. Okay, so I don't know what the pupils were clipping to, but it wasn't this. We'll have to undo it as reference layer. I think I can... Oh, I get it. It is because this is the ears, not the eyes. Oops. Okay, there we go. Now we can see all our horrible, oh no, it's like a sonic cyclops. Okay, let's just blast all of that away. Mondo select, and then, not with mechanical pencil, but, selection. Mondo select, just everything. And then just, where the heck did my brush go? That select is too big. I can't find my brush. Okay, we're just gonna toss all that. Now let's actually go for this lovely, like slightly darker than sky blue eye color. I guess maybe a cerulean, I'm not entirely sure. But we're just gonna go, we'll do a slightly smaller select than this. But now, pupils will stay in the eyes and not escape out of them. See you in there trying to sneak away. And in keeping with the original style a little bit, I may round off the tops a tad. Much as my style, I probably wouldn't do that. I do think that it actually looks good with this character. And you may be thinking this blue is a tiny bit too dark, and it is a tiny bit too dark, but it's with the highlights, it's going to look much better. Okay, so even like without the line work now, this at least looks recognizable. So there's just a handful more things that we want to mess with. Let's see, ear layer. We'll do plus mouth, I think. Because they're going to be... I'm aiming for the same color on those. We're going to go back to a smaller select for this. And so sometimes it's easy to group them by colors when you've just got a few small detail-y bits like this. Ah! No. This one, please. Thank you. I don't know why with the select tool it always leaves like a slight rim when you're doing a second layer on top of the first, unless you click it like a couple of times, and it slowly bleeds out over that rim. It's interesting how it works. Okay, so again, like I was saying, I really don't want to do line work at all if I can avoid it. I'm not doing any in the hair, but we may have to do a little bit for eyebrows and such. We can do that with shading, of course, but it's going to just end up being shading with lines, which, like, I don't know, that's not helpful much, really. And this way we can get it over a couple different layers, like get the eyes and the actual face underneath these eyelashes a little better. So, as much as I try to be completely lineless, I will concede a little bit of lining this time. Not even 8. We're going to start with a 6 for this. And I know we don't have the taper, but we can use that trick we talked about a little earlier. Doopa-doopa-doo. Doopa-doo. Wherever the heck I put the eraser. Ah, on this window. I see. And we can just sort of scoop a taper into it. Scoop the taper in. Now, as far as the actual color for this, it's interesting because I don't want a flat black. It's not what it is in the original, and I think it'd look way too harsh. So I'm actually going to take the skin tone and I'm going to get a way darker variant of it. Like almost but not quite black. This isn't even like a mocha brown, it's just kind of its own thing. And we'll see if that, even that looks like a little too harsh. You know what I may do is even instead of the selection tool, because we're conceding this is line art, let's go back to the mechanical pencil. I don't need to follow this too much. These are just, you know, random scribbles on their own. We'll have some tweaks there. I like those ones as details. And then these ones, I do want to make sure I get the forms right, but I do kind of like, I still don't want like clean edged forms for this. We'll do a little bit like this. We'll see how it looks with just the flats without any of the other line work, and if it like stands out too much and looks terrible, then we won't do that. But for now, I'm going to try it. Get that a little more. An acorny looking. I know it's not an acorn in the original, but that's sort of the feel I'm getting from it. So, way we've got it drawn now, so that's what I'm going to go for. And of course, in addition to sort of filling out the middle a little bit, do we want to have the other eyebrow visible? I'm kind of thinking let's just keep it with very plain eyebrow. And I'm going to do like non-scratchy forms for a few of these pieces. Not the mouth though. That's probably going to be the last of these ones where I'm doing this sort of test scratchiness. And we'll see if that ends up working. I'm not sure it will. This is experimental. But I do want to use the selector tool, not the erase selector tool, mind you, the selector. Do these, because I think that for the eye shape, it's a really defining piece, and I think it's going to look better if it's like very clear and sharp. Right. So again, I know that right now we're getting like way too much on here. But there's two things that are going to change this. One of those things is that I am going to clip this to the skin layer. Means I need to go here, I think, flip it, and then I think I can still move it? No, I cannot. Okay. We're not going to clip this to the skin layer. Wish there was. Do that. Face detail should not be in front of the hair. Okay, then we're just going to go ahead and fill, and then we'll just do our tweaks the way we have been doing, using the erase selection. Taper some of these. Well, I shouldn't have filled yet if I was going to do that. This way I can make sure I don't taper and like reveal some weird awkward connection of the eye underneath it. We don't want that. Also makes the filling a little easier, believe it or not. Taper these ones off. These I may go back to the bigger select on that and then keep the bolder shape on that. We'll do like the subtle taper for it. Well, not subtle, but just the taper's still going to be pretty bold, but it's going to follow these original shapes a little better. Taper that one in as well. Curved. Let's see. Yeah, maybe too much when we've got the sort of scratchy other face details. We'll see how we want to do on that. See how that comes together in the end. It also might be a tad too dark compared to the other scratchy facial details, and just lightening it would be all it takes to solve that. It's a very real possibility as well. So we're obviously going to have some down there. Oops, I'm on erase select. So deceptive because the first one does actually select, which is handy a lot of the time, but like still a surprise when I realize I'm on the wrong tool. Now I want the erase select to sort of taper the bottom of this one a little bit. and I'm not really worried about tapering this one. It's got kind of a natural taper that matches the other. We'll just do that. So we need to select this one and toss it. That up a little bit. Okay. So it's a little hard to judge right now because we've got the line work, so I want to see what it looks like without the line work. And yeah, I think the fadey bits are a little too jarring compared to the rest of the style. If we want to get some of those fades, I think maybe let's do those. Let's do those with the actual shading when we do the rest of it. And the same rule may even apply to sort of like the fun, like little details around the nose and eye. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually remove those. In our big selector pen, we're going to toss those. Going to toss, well, I don't know if I want to toss these. They're actually like kind of an important detail. They balance out the face a little bit too. Let's go back into this. Hey, wait a second. This should be. Right, it's still in front of the eyes. We do need to taper it a little bit. Not so much that we can see the eye underneath it. Or we can see where the eye meets the skin underneath it. Not that that'd be unrealistic, it just doesn't really match the style we've been doing. And then for these, I'm going to make them a little more solid. So we are going to end up using the select tool. I know I'm going a tiny bit over my hour goal. Ah. It's fun to get finicky with these though, and to like really get in there and see how many things I can tweak. Keep a little of the edge blur from these original soft lines and see how that goes. I'm not sure it'll go well, but you know, only way to find out, only way to know at this point is to just do it and see how it looks. So a little bit of trial and error, and then the next time we do this, we'll have learned these things. Or at least, you know, if we do this a few times, we'll learn it. Sometimes it doesn't all stick the first time, y'all know. That's part of the benefit of like walking through and explaining these things too, is when I do it on stream, I'm also not only just helping spread the information a little bit, I'm also actually helping myself remember it. So I'm not going to pretend that's completely selfless. But I do actually genuinely want to spread it too. Like, the more people know this stuff, the better, of course. Otherwise, like, you know, I wouldn't have learned it if people didn't share this info with me. And there's a lot of stuff that I won't learn unless I've got chat here to guide me on it a little bit. Once we get, well, once we've got people in here who want to, obviously, no pressure still. I know I've brought it up a lot. I'm not trying to, like, sneakily say, like, oh, you don't have to, but, like, no, seriously, you can lurk. I don't care. We're just happy that you're here, happy that you're around. Hope that we're providing something that is worthwhile to your time. As I say, as I erase my own selection for, like, the 10th time this stream. Oh well. Okay, let's see how this looks zoomed out. That matches the sort of style we've got going a little better. Let me try to, oh no, the opposite of that, in fact. A little wibbly, a little big, and I'm gonna have to clean up the mouth, obviously. But I think it's going to be an excellent place for us to start. See if I can't taper these a little bit, make something a little more interesting going on with them. And look a little less obvious. There we go. Okay, and then this. Normally I just show mouths with shading, so like this will be an interesting test to see if we can actually like render a mouth in this way. I may actually erase the original one entirely first. Toss that one. Whoop. And then I do want this back so I can just sort of follow it. And we can do some of our tapering trick on this as well. So I actually, nope, not deselect all, just undo what I just did. I don't want to do too much on it, really. Because I keep ending up. Part of this is the issue if I've got like a really big taper brush. Yes, I'm aware of that. I didn't mean to click you. I am sorry for waking you. Oh, warning message. But let's see if we can't, without losing the length of it, see if we can't just smooth it out a little bit. Fill that in. The other thing with this layer that is kind of important is I think that the color we've got going for it is a tad too dark still. Since we're going to have the harsher forms, I'm going to make it softer. So, to that end, I'm literally just going to fill tool the heck out of it. We'll see if, like, even, we may need to soften it up even more than this. But we're going to go ahead and remove these lines so that we see just this in its own shape. And yeah, I'm even going to go softer than that. Try some real light. Still distinctive compared to the skin, mind. Seeing how that fills in layers. I wonder if there's like some subtle gradient I'm not seeing on it. And then if we zoom out, okay, see that character's going to be recognizable. The mouth will probably need a little bit of shading around it to help it pop, but that's okay. It does also end up looking a tad like a mustache when it's this bold. Like we hide the flats, it doesn't look like a mustache, but when it's like this and the color doesn't match, it's maybe. This is one of those things that you don't notice when you're doing line work, but you may need to actually, whoops, pay attention to on this. Let's see, and we're just gonna see if this needs to be outlined a little bit. I really don't like outlines. I feel like they're not really in the spirit of lineless. You're, you know, going out of your way to do lines. But, and they're also probably a little too bold on this one. I think it may be, let's make the mouth even like a much lighter one. Barely distinct from the skin tone. See if that works better. Yeah, I think it kind of does, and I may want to do that for like, anything up here that isn't meant to be terribly bold. The original, the eyebrows were a little softer. Whoops. Okay. You know, what we could do here, we can match the lines a little more. Let's see about, and again, I realize I'm just fiddling with it at this point, and we're already 10 minutes over the hour mark, although only 7 minutes over the actual 9 o'clock mark, as we got a slightly early start today. Woohoo! But let's see if we can't make that, no, not that. Once again, the opposite of that. Try to make this look a little more natural like that, sort of like we did with the C curves below. It's actually weirding me out more somehow. Maybe it needs to turn up a little bit. Other option, of course, is to just not have the mouth color in the lower section at all. I'd like to try to figure this one out, and, you know, I can even move the ref over so I can see what we're working with here. Trying to recreate this one so we get more of a mouth shape, and maybe with some proper shading we can. So I may leave it alone for now, and then we'll come back to it at the end once we've sort of sorted out some other things. So for now, we've got our flats in. And this is definitely starting to look more like an actual character. It's definitely starting to come together a little better. So, what I may do, and this is just, let's give it a consideration before we go on a break. I realize we've been going a long time. We're all going to need a quick break. But I am going to just test out some slightly. Let's see how the full eyes look. You know. See if we don't have this taper, does it take away from? Well, okay, it does. It picks up a little bit of the blue, I see. Oops. Let's go ahead and clear that out, and then we can make a judgment call. Assuming, of course, that I clean it up a tad bit. That's sufficient for how it'll look when we zoom out. I kind of prefer having like the nose form in it. I don't know about y'all. I'm welcome to input. Maybe if we do a more subtle one. But that just makes it look like a really kind of skinny nose, I think. I think that's what that's going to do. Let's zoom out and see. Yeah, it still does. Okay, then let's sort of go back to the way we had it before. And check that against the line work. Basically matches. I do like the idea of the bottoms of the eyes sort of lining up and aiming at each other. It keeps that looking a little more continuous. Which, granted, your eyes aren't continuous, but the levels they're on should be roughly the same. So, like, we don't want to get too crazy with that. Okay, and then just to sort of round this out a little bit. Realize I could have just done undo and gone back to the old way, but I also kind of wanted to not do that, so we're just going to stick with this. Awesome. Okay, that was a good line. I cleaned that up nicely. Okay, then we're going to leave it like this, and we will be back just a couple of minutes. I will see y'all then. And don't worry, I'm not turning the music off. Howdys and howdys and salutations, y'all. We are back. Thank you for sticking around. I mean, unless you're a bot, then you're gonna automatically stick around here, and I assume a lot of other places. Which I guess you're welcome to sit around, but like, you know, we're not really looking for bots here. They're not great for building a stream. Yeah, they meet some of the little metrics that Twitch follows, but they're not actually, you know, people watching the stream, and there's not, you know, getting good metrics on this is worthless if no one actually watches. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather have no metrics and just get the drawing practice than fake metrics. But if any of y'all are real, obviously happy to have you. If any of the ones who visit all the time are real, happy that you're enjoying the streams. And to anyone watching the VODs, because we do post this on the VODs channel, which we've got all the way back to episode 1. We're on page 8 now, I believe. Wow. Wow, okay, we're actually chipping away at these. Maybe 9? No, it's 8, I think. I can't believe I lost count already. Anyway, one of them. We're on a stream. We're definitely on a stream. I can say that with certainty. But yes, we have a VODs channel that this is also on, so I guess it's not on a stream if you're watching the VODs. But hi, anyone watching the VODs. Maybe you stumbled across this randomly and you decided to click on a random episode number and then you watched for over an hour. Or perhaps, just maybe, maybe this channel actually got big and you're watching back through the archives. Although again, why are you watching like episode 8? Start with like 1 or 2. Sure, they've got technical difficulties, but they're like the significant milestones, right? Like, I'm happy you're here, but why are you here? Anyway, you know, obviously, to the bots or the people, okay, less to the bots, not super thrilled to have you, but, like, you're here. Except for the Stream Elements bot, you're cool. But anyone here, awesome, happy to have you, hope you're enjoying it. And if you've got any advice, feel free to huck it at me. No worries, you don't have, I mean, I appreciate it being sugar-coated, but you don't have to. You can just throw it straight at me, like a volleyball to the face, and I'll catch it probably with my face, but it will be appreciated because I'll learn how to dodge. You might guess how my PE classes went in the past. Not well. They could have been worse. Honestly and truly, they could have been so much worse. So, let's look at where we left off. We've got the flats done. We've got a little less than an hour left. I want to get some shading in, but I want to also think about where we want the priorities to be, because I think that next stream, I'm going to go just all in on the hair shading. It's going to take the bulk of the time. Face shading is comparatively straightforward. Like, clothes shading is one that I quite enjoy and I think will be very easy, so those are probably both ones we'll tackle today. And I'm looking forward to the hair shading, but it's a challenge and I need to be able to focus on it for a longer time than we have now. So, with that in mind, we are going to start on the clothes, I think. You know, actually, it's usually better when I just do these in order bottom to top. We're going to skip the back hair for the obvious reasons. Okay, so skin tones then. So, the way we do shading, I know I've demonstrated this a little bit when we were doing the salt character sheets, but we're going to keep doing it with this, is, we take one of these normal flat layers, we're going to add another raster, so this is a raster, this is a raster, these are just two different ones, and I'm just going to call this one Skin Shade, which I still think sounds like an ominous type of ghost that would be interesting to draw sometime. Or horrifying, one of the two. I mean, the Godskin duo from Elden Ring is a living nightmare, or maybe a dead nightmare. They're a nightmare either way. So maybe not. But we're going to go ahead and take this skin shade layer, and we're going to do two things. We are going to use this button to clip it to the layer below, which means anything I draw on this layer will only be visible if it's over the top of something on this layer. So to demonstrate, I've got this pen here. Drawing over the background does nothing. Drawing over the face does things. Drawing over the hair does nothing. Face does things. So, it basically constrains it, and that way all of our shadows are going to stay very easily on the shapes we want them to, and they're not going to bleed over into the hair or anywhere else. It makes it really easy to keep this stuff organized, and that's part of the reason we've done all the colors on different layers, and why I've made a point of doing the hair on 2 layers, is it should make the shading... On the hair, it'll make it more complicated, but it'll also make it better. So, we've done that, and then the next step is, for shades, I don't want to have to figure out what color matches this exactly, but is like a slightly different tone, like that. I'm going to just pick the skin tone color, and then I'm going to change this from normal, which is just the colors you put down are the colors you get, to multiply, Not just darken, but multiply, which basically, I need to go look up the difference between the two, but I know that, I think darken just basically puts a black filter over it, and the more you layer, the darker the black gets. Whereas multiply, it's basically going to take the color I'm drawing with, and it's going to multiply it against the layer here, and we're going to get some cross combo. So the skin tone, darkened by a second filter of the skin tone, ends up with this color through whatever algorithm it uses. But that is a pretty good color for us. Although this isn't, once again, this isn't supposed to be from the skin tone. This is supposed to be from the clothes tone. Oh, wait, no, it is the skin layer. Man, I've gone and confused myself. Anyway, beyond that, though, we're just going to go back to the same shading tools we've been using. And for the skin, I'm just going to get some broad strokes, even. I do want to think about where the light source is located a little bit before we start. I'm probably going to have it over here on the right, just because we've got this 3/4 view facing the left. I want as much of the face illuminated as possible, so it's going to be to the right. And technically, it's going to be closer to us, the viewer, rather than behind the character. We're not messing with 3D space too much with this, but we do want to think about that a little bit. It's not going to be far enough behind that the ear is casting a shadow. It's not going to be behind so that the hair is leaving massive shadows, just like the little slight ones from the distance. So, we'll add a little bit there. This collar is tall enough that it's going to end up casting a bit of a shadow regardless. I'm not going to go for too much precision there, just like some vague hinting at it. This part of the face is going to be in shadow over there behind the hair. Whoa. I didn't realize. Wait a second. Ooh, okay, so that's one of those issues where the top hair layer didn't actually fill all the way. Let's see if we can't reveal a little more of that. Whoopsie doodle. Maybe this is supposed to match the original drawing in some way? Oh, I see the other thing I've done wrong, and that may be the only thing I've done wrong, is I never actually clipped it to this layer. I said clip to the layer below, and I guess I unclipped it. And or maybe I undid the clipping and the multiply when I was undoing colors. Well, now that's an interesting whoopsie doodle, isn't it? So anyway, yes, that's supposed to be clipped and multiplied. I shouldn't just talk about it, I should actually do it, shouldn't I? That makes more sense. Okay. I'm also, just for a little bit of consistency, again, if we were doing like really, really detailed stuff, I would like actually plot this a little more. But I'm just gonna sort of follow, based on the way the hair is designed, knowing, oops, I don't really need these two, but whatever, they're not showing up anyway. Knowing that this is where it actually meets the head, there's gonna be less shadow there, but we are gonna have a little shadow around the edges. Maybe not this one so much. And then like a little shadow down here. I do think this shadow tone, actually, we're going to want to shift to something lighter that we're multiplying. So once again, I'm just going to go fill these shadows, and you can see they're all connected on their own layer. And I think that's maybe too close to the cloak color, but like better. Well, that's definitely too close to the cloak color. I've gone and made that situation less good. Whoops. Let's stick to this. We'll start with that. We'll work with that. I am going to do like a little, or actually it does still need to be a select and then clear, doesn't it? We'll just do a little one in here. I want to kind of hint at the actual like cut in the gap here. Okay. Okay. And then I think for consistency's sake, then I'd have to clear this section out too, which I should do with a larger pen. But I'm already on this one and I already went and did it. So, okay, I'm not trying to do too much with the skin shadows here. I try to keep them fairly simple in this particular style, even with the complex hair. I'm going to have to clean some of these up a little bit, though. I want this to taper a little more before it gets to the full big one. I really ought to have the hair taper a little more there, too. That's kind of funky. But I guess if we're really thinking about the angle, it'd probably be more like this. Because if the light's over here, then, like, it's more that we wouldn't be able to see under the curve. It's not that the light, it's not like there isn't a shadow there, it's just I think the angle of the hair is going to block any shadows it's casting. Sort of my thought there. Again, the complexity of this hair is going to make it a tad more complicated to shade, even just around it. So, We're definitely going to have some trial and error next time on Thursday when we pick this up and do the hair shading. But for now, it's not going to be too bad. Let's test a little shading in here. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to like hint at noses without making it look like the character's gotten a black eye. Obviously, we haven't quite nailed that yet. Maybe just a very, very faint little bit there. Feels like it should at least continue all the way up, but then it looks like it's just... Ah, well. We could go kind of the She-Ra route and just do like a big ol'... I mean, that looks like a mustache when it's like that. But just do like a big ol' color swath. Cute show, by the way. Definitely recommend it. The new one, at least. I haven't seen the old one. It's probably also good. But yeah, we got little shading there. We may come back to that a little more once we have some other Oh, okay, there's one thing I do want to do. Before we move on from the face shading too much, is you do want to get a little bit in here. Again, I've gone and gotten kind of a rough taper on that, so let's try to smooth that a little, and then use the erase selection with a bigger round to just kind of gently smooth it. And let's try filling like that. But first, I'm actually going to taper this part up too. There we go. Let's just... I'm on erase select still. Smooth this out a little bit. I don't know why that one's gotten so warpy. Usually the big brush lets me smooth that a little better, but I guess because I'm going really slow, like every little movement is still tracking in it, so like it's not great. Okay, so there we go. We've got a little bit of defined shading. I'm going to clean up a tiny bit on that under chin neck area a little bit, just so that this is kind of consistent. Looks a little more fluid. And I think we're going to probably leave it at that for now. We may end up bringing that shadow up a little further up on the face. We will see. But I think that that's a good starting point for that. So now the next one is the eyes. Ooh, I like doing bubble eyes. I shouldn't, but I like doing them. So we'll do the white, and then we do have to actually make it a little bit of a shade, but I do like to give it kind of a blue cool shade. It helps contrast against most skin tones, and it fits better with like the kind of clean, pure white that we're going for. Like blue shadows tend to imply that sort of pure light a little bit. I don't know why necessarily. I've just found that they do. And red guides and stuff that were like, hey, blue shadows are... Okay, it would help if I clipped it. If I A, did it on its own layer, and then B, clipped it to the actual thing. So this is the step that I always forget. Eyeshadow. So this is, I hope, clipped to the one below it. Now let's try that. Now let's see, with this eye shape, it's going to be a little harder to have, like, proper bubble eyes. But, trust me when I say it is not enough to stop me from trying. Nothing else will at least look like the nose is casting a shadow, which is good in its own right. You know, let's look at it zoomed out. Kind of making me think that I ought to leave it, not get rid of all of that, but like that part maybe. Whoops, nope. It's interesting. Something we'll have to tweak again later. The other thing that I want to do real quick though is, this is actually a good thing to do while we remember. We've got eyeshadow on that, but I'm also going to add a highlight layer, which is very similar to the multiply. But I'm just going to call it highlight. We're going to add some highlights. And we're going to call, let's see, this is just going to be lighten. And it basically works the opposite of multiply. Instead of multiplying it and getting both colors darker, this is going to make them both lighter. Or it's going to lighten it by the second one. And again, there's a logic to it that I don't fully and properly understand yet. This, so that it's like clipped to it. Or perhaps the issue is that I should be doing it on the pupils. There we go. Let's undo everything we did there. Okay, except for highlight should still be on pupils. I guess lighten isn't the one that we want, maybe. Maybe we want screen. Or subtract. No. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Difference. That would be fun for some abstract art. You can get like inversions and stuff going on there. Linear. Not vivid light either. Undoing that. Let's look through some of these and see if we can't find. Ooh. Okay, that's cool. I'm gonna have to remember that for later. Divide would make sense to be the opposite of multiply, but it doesn't look like it's doing that. Saturation, also a cool one, but not what we need. Color, also cool, and brightness. Maybe I just need less of a bright color for this. In the same way that I do really bright colors for my multiply, maybe we need a dark color for this. Granted, not quite that dark. Okay. I don't think we want color dodge or glow dodge. Maybe just add. There we go. Little trial and error there, but we'll figure it out. We're going to do add for this one. And, yeah, even then we can stick to fairly dark colors on this. Because I don't want it to be anything crazy. Man, we've done so many layers on it, though. I suspect add isn't going to play as nice with doing it again. Oh, maybe it is, because we're still in the same layer. Okay, so we'll start with that. I do want them to kind of have similar-ish shapes. Sort of round this off a little bit, or flatten it and then round it off, I guess. I'm cleaning that up a little bit until I realize that I'm finicking with it way too much. Okay, they look a little off like this. May have to tweak this a little bit later. Let's see. Part of it's this. I think it's less the color though, and more the size and shape. I guess this one should be taller because this one is sort of implied behind the nose a little bit. In order for these to actually look like they're matching, this one needs to be bigger. It needs to match relative to the pupil behind it. That's looking a little better. I think it's still going to be a tad off, but I also think that's... Yeah, that actually looks like the character's looking in a direction, which is what we want. Okay, so we'll leave that like that. Highlight is good. Pupils don't need shading, so we'll actually just use that as the pupil shade. Loathing. Okay. This will be an interesting one. For a number of reasons. It's going to add a lot to the red layer. It's going to add a lot to the... Actually, it's going to add a lot to all three layers. But for the red layer, let's just sort of start with kind of this lightish pink one. Once again, I'm adding a fresh layer for this. Nope, not a vector layer. Sorry, I love vector layers, but this is not the time and place, my friend. Professor Oak, you're not allowed to use vector layers inside. Shade, not Zad. Shade. There we go. We will map it, we will multiply it, we'll save. Okay. Now let's... Step one is because this is behind, I want to make sure that there's like a little bit of a cast shadow here. I'm liking that shadow tone already too. Then this is inside and hidden from the light source, so it's going to have a shadow. Note that I'm maintaining the red rim a little bit. Similar deal with this one. That part's hidden behind the neck. May bring it out a little more there. This is an intriguing song, and not one I'm sure I've heard of before. Now, I kind of want to imply, and we can look back at our reference image to compare this a little. Although it's not super easy to see, I want to imply that the gold is actually sort of like lumped up above it. You can sort of see here. And one way to really emphasize that is to add just the tiniest bit of shadow for this lower section being blocked by the gold, basically. I don't want to catch it too much on the vertical. Catching it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it basically just helps imply that there's a little bit more, like, A, a little bit of curvature to this, and B, a little bit more to that gold's shadow casting ability. I'm going to do basically the same thing for the red, but against the shadow of the cloak. This one's going to be much more in shadow until it sort of comes around and tapers off. It's a taper with the curve, not just before the curve. Nope, not that one. Just a hair. Tiniest little bit there. Kind of do the same thing on this side, but again, much less shadow than on the other side. Which again, probably ought to have fixed the fact that this is running over the edge before I did this, but I think that's okay. And then if we've noticed in the original here, whoops, no, not there. The original here, there are actually a few subsections within the red, so we're going to try to represent that a little bit with the shading too. Again, there's not a lot that we're going to try to show in here. Especially because these shadows end up looking more like secret line work, which is still not really what I want. But they do help. Well, okay, I'm not sure about that. That one looks a little off. I feel like curving this is not going to make it better. It does not. Okay. I think I've made that shadow too big and this corner a little too round. See if that gets it a little better. There we go. We'll add a little bit of an implied taper there. Clean that up just a hair. And I'm gonna even taper this one up a little bit, or a lot, as that may go. I think that's probably good for that. One other thing that I'm gonna want to get with the red, and this is the more obvious shadow, is just the fact that if our light source is to the front and to the side a little bit, this section's gonna be in shadow a little bit, and we can imply some curvature with this bend as well. Which I actually need to make the bend. There we go. Zip those out of the way. And I think, see if we can't get this to actually represent where this bends a little bit too. Okay, so that lines the shadow up better with the top. I think that's good. The hair is going to cast like a tiny bit of a shadow, but I think this is kind of implied to be in front of it. We could see how that looks, but I don't think that's, yeah, I don't think that one's quite as good. I'm going to make this a little more exaggerated. There we go. I think that's better. I'm going to actually zip out a little bit of this one too. And not quite. There we go. Just a hair. And smooth the edge out a little bit. There we go. I think I kind of need to smooth the whole thing out now. Take it back just a notch. There we go. Okay. So, I think that's probably good for the red there. And we may come back to that a little bit later. We'll see. Once we get all three of the clothes pieces done, then we'll need to make sure the shadows are sort of matching across all of them. So for the gold shade, once again, I'm just going to take the gold color, grab a slightly lighter variant of it, and then let's just keep on doing what we've been doing. Would help if I clipped it and made it multiply. See if that works a little bit better. Yeah. Just a tad, actually doing the things that I said I'm going to do. Using the techniques that you have. Whoa. Crazy idea. So one thing that we might want to do on the gold a little bit, besides having this part roughly stay in the same shadow, I want to keep the curvature for it a little bit. But yeah, I want to keep that. I want to sort of keep this shadow going a little bit too. A little more. There we go. The shadow can, not all the way up, but we will continue it this way. Yeah, this shadow is weird because it's actually ended up on across like 3 different layers. But I do still want to make sure that it's there and showing as I'd expect it to. This can have just a tiny... Kind of made that much bigger than I intended to. Let's see if that looks decent. That adds a little bit of shape. The more subtle one might have been the way to go. Figure out a little bit of it. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay. Maybe we ought to have just the tiniest hint of shadow on the red being cast by this gold ribbon too. So I'm actually going to go back to the red section. Let's see how the fill does with this multiply. A little different, but it'll be okay. Okay, so one thing that we want to get with the gold a bit is some actual wrinkles and stuff. So I'm going to go to a slightly smaller pen, and I'm going to try to etch like a little bit more of that. And we're going to have to use our taper trick for this for sure, because this needs to sort of taper into the end of a wrinkle. Not quite that harsh. Oop, nope, not that. I feel like I've gone and made that one, yep, too harsh again. Ah! That was the worst one yet. Perhaps a smaller brush is called for in this situation. Nope, not that though. Okay, we'll start with that. That crease is going to be somewhat covered by, you know, the other things. So not on the red shade, but on the gold shade. Let's do that. And we've got a little bit of implied, like, actual crease there. Let's see. Okay, I'm shifting this to something a little smaller than that. Get a little bit finer control over these edges. Oops. Don't need to toss that one, so I'm just going to erase selection and erase that. Okay. Not fill. Delete. There we go. And then I'm going to do kind of the same thing, specifically right here, because it definitely looks like a place where there's got to be a crease on it. Like it would just have to fold in like that, basically. So we're already on erase selection. So there, we've got like a little bit of it going in like that, and then a bit of it... Oops, sorry, erase selection. Let's go. Let's continue this shadow down as well. And it just adds a little bit of texture to this piece here. See if we can't get one right in the middle and make that look good. That's something that I need to practice a little anyway, so this is a good excuse. Sort of do that. Yeah, that actually looks better than I oftentimes try to bring it in from the edge, and I find that ends up looking like it's way too much of a crease in an area where the fabric doesn't look like. So we'll stick with that for the gold creases a little bit. Now for the beige layer, basically the same deal. Don't let me forget to actually, well, A, name the layer shade, but B, add multiply and have it pull from the previous layer. Gotta make sure we do all 3 of those steps, or else this does not work the way we expect it to. Okay. So then, I'm going to use the outline to figure out where I want to add these. And the selection pen, not the erase pen. But because we've got these sort of indents, those look like the perfect place for there to be like a little bit of a crease. Now I don't want them to be exactly parallel and the same size and shape, because that'd be a little weird. Looks unnatural. Isn't really what we're going for. To make the fabric look as reasonable as possible after all. Okay. So I am going to continue that one a little further, and then we are going to still grab the erase selection, do some slightly softer tapers on this one. Softer, I said, not really vicious. A little closer. Yeah. Okay. Let us start with this. I think we've got the creases kind of too dark on this, actually. Let's go with a slightly lighter fill. And we'll just give these another go. Deselect this and grab the fill tool. That might be too bright. Let's see if we can get one that's like over here, maybe. That's better. Oh, no. It's still too dark, but like... Oh, there we go, there we go, there we go. I'm going to actually stand by that one and say, yes, that is what I was looking for. And I'm not too worried about any on this side. We may need to add some for balance if it ends up looking off. But, like, I'm kind of inclined to keep the creasing on this side like they're leaning towards the person a little bit, which they kind of are in the actual drawing. Towards the viewer, I mean. But to that end, maybe we want to make these shadows a little lighter so they're not too much of an eye catch. So like, while I think this color is good, I think like a fainter one might be better in this particular situation. Maybe even fainter. Really keep it where it's not the main draw of the picture. Okay. And the same may apply to the shadows on the gold, for the record. We'll see if we want to make those a little lighter or darker or not. Okay, how we doing on time? Oh, we got about 11 minutes left. No, we got like 15 minutes left. Awesome. So once again, I'm not really planning on messing with the hair yet. Oh, hold on, I need to do a little more on this, and then we'll move on to, I think, probably the final thing that we're going to shade for tonight. Some parts of the shading go real fast. Some parts do not. I want to make sure we have plenty of time on Thursday to do the shading for those pieces that tend to be a tad slower. And I want to make sure that we sort of, like, some of the actual, like, creasing of this too. It should have the shadows matching the red pretty much. This one we can make a little bolder. That'll help balance this side too, which should have like just a tiny bit of rim shadow, I think, in the hair. Happen to. Tiny bit, not a ton. There we go. There we go. Okay, let me actually get the angle of the curve a little better there. There we go. We'll leave it like that. We may end up doing more shadow over. In fact, I'm inclined to go ahead and do more shadow over here. Not quite that much, mind. I want the taper. Let's see. I think that's better, and we may end up doing something similar for these, simplifying them. That is one of those things where, like, I don't want to have too many areas where it's, like, really big swaths of, like, clean shadow in one section and the super nitpicky in another, because your eyes are drawn to the details, and those tend to be on the fabric rather than the face. Although, the hair is about to blow all of that out of the water, so we'll sort of see how that looks at the end. But I do want to try to get this last little bit, which is, oh, I guess the mouth too. I didn't, right, a lot of the shading. Okay, good. This will be good for our last little bit. Not too worried about shading the face details. They're dark enough on their own that, like, they don't necessarily, like, the difference between a shaded one and a not shaded one wouldn't be super visible. Like, or at least not super noticeable. So I'm just going to kind of leave them as is. Multiply, flip to the layer below. Okay, step one is, if the light source is over here, we're not going to have too much shadow on this one, just like a little bit. Which I should. Like, I don't know that it actually matters what color I'm shading with, particularly, but I do like to have it match where I can. Even though that one ended up being darker. Wasn't really what I wanted. Yeah, I think it's just the, like, lightness, darkness, not the hue. So just brightness. I need to do a little more research on that, though. This has been a good learning experience that I have completely forgotten how those work. I swear I used to know at one point. Okay, so we'll come in here, and then we'll do similarly big. I just want to get a little bit to imply the flap of the ear there. And we're going to do kind of the same deal below. But like maybe even a little more, we'll see. Because I really do like I want the ears to look floppy. I kind of like that as part of this character's design. I think that's a fun detail. So. Oh, we don't necessarily need that much shade on this side. We're not going to get too much shade on this side. Like really and truly. Because of where the light source is. Oh, jeepers. Yeah, no, not that. But this side, on the other hand, is definitely going to be getting more. Because the hair itself is going to be casting some shadows on this. Okay, could I hit the fill button, please? Thank you. Thank you, me, for actually finding the button. Okay, that doesn't make sense with the angle. Really, this needs to taper sort of back with this one. Or at least consistently with that one. Part of the issue is the ear, this little detail at the top itself isn't actually quite as smooth as I'd like it to be in the green part. That's something I'll have to tweak. So I want to make sure I have one continuous curve here, not all these weird like piecemeal ones. And then this bit from the hair is going to be shaded. But then the like ear itself is also going to have its moments where it comes in. Kind of sort of like whoop, trim those down a little bit. That kind of looked better before. This one too, I'm just going to sort of this tool itself, like the roundness of the actual like selector to get some of the curve on this. There we go. Maybe we do bring this one up even like all the way. Because we're still going to have shadow here. Less so in this little section. And we could use screen tones for this too, for the record, but right now I'm sticking to sort of this style of shading, which I'm enjoying a lot. I'm definitely going to mess with screen tones at some point in the future, though. Like, they seem like a whole lot of fun. Really interesting. Okay. So. You know, I actually kind of want this to taper a little better, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll fill this one back in. Okay, so. Now that we've seen this a little bit, and maybe even gotten a tiny bit of shadow in there, to make it look like this one's folding, let's zoom out a little bit and see how those are looking. This one I really like. This one I think is coming on a little... It's not that it's too strong, it's that it's not curved enough. So it ends up looking a little bit like weirdly square. Let's see if we can't damper that a little bit. Same for this one. I don't know that light would get there. I don't think that makes sense. Well, we sort of got this one casting the shadow here, but then it shouldn't really be the same width as this. I'm going to taper this one a little bit and then bring this back. Work on clean up the taper, that one too. And that's better. Yeah. Like this shadow may not be exactly right. I'd need to look at some actual references of like critter ears to see. But right now we've got 6 minutes left, so I don't want to mess with that too much. Because I think it also looks pretty decent as it is. Now the real challenge here is making sure that this looks halfway decent. And is clearly a mouth. And that's going to be just not the easiest thing in the world. Without it also looking weird. Let's see if we can't get that. Let's start with that. Top shadow's like too far. Ends up looking a little weird. And it looks like they're sticking the tongue out like really far now. I'm sure it is. Yeah, like that's weird. Let's not do that. Scratch that. Tossing that idea in the bin. Let's just try this shading. And like a little bit along the edge here, I guess. Not worrying about the middle split so much, just trying to make sure that this looks like a natural shape. Okay. That doesn't look like they're sticking their tongue out anymore. It just looks like they've sort of got their mouth open. Kind of a funky expression. I think this undershading is still, like, causing us a little too much damage. Like, we need contrast, but we don't need that piece to be doing the contrast. So let's try tossing that. Like actually getting an eraser of a decent size that can do it. Because on the one hand, I don't want this top piece to end up looking like a mustache, so we may need to make this little mouth section smaller. But also, like, we do want that to be defined enough. Kind of is. Kind of is. I may leave it as that for now. We'll definitely come back to that one tomorrow. And then one thing I completely forgot on the skin tone shading that I said we'd go back and do was to sort of deal with these. Not with an eraser though, with a select tool. All select tool, mind. See if these closely bunched ones look a little better on it. You can tell that this is kind of a rosier red as opposed to that one, like because I'm using a different shadow tone. That's not really what I'm... Let's see if we can get back to the skin tone shadows that we had been using. Okay, it wasn't that. Nope. That's better. Not exactly the same, but close enough. Zooming out. Let's try it with just the nose one. Enjoying the Deltarune music. That's a fun throwback. I say throwback. It was like this year, wasn't it? Yeah, I kind of like that nose shadow. I think it adds something. Now, you might ask why I don't just color pick this and be like, hey, we got the color. It's because when you add the multiply piece to it, it's not actually going to be the same color. It's going to be way darker. But that's not, like, well, I'm just sort of having to, if I built a palette at the start of this, which I should have done and will one day learn how to do, I'm not going to promise by next stream, but one of these times, then I wouldn't have to keep using the color picker at all. I just have my colors and go for it. But I didn't do that, and so I can't do that. So we'll use that as a little bit of nose shading. It's kind of a different style, but it fits with the original art piece a little more. And I think that's kind of fun. I may have to add a few tweaks like that, just like with the pencil piece. We'll see if they end up looking too jarring. Like just adding a few like detail bits. But like I don't know that they do. Other pieces I need to make sure I get that I almost forgot. In my flats, let's see. This ought to be on face details, but it is a different color, so that's going to be a little wonky, but they're small. So I think it's fine. Is in the original, they mentioned they've got like some little white makeup sections above and below each eye. And I do want to make sure that we sort of actually capture those best as we can. So I will go ahead and do those. We'll make sure, unfortunately they're both obscured on that side, but that's okay. And then, I guess face details is going to need a shade layer after all. Here I thought it wouldn't. Okay, we can do this real quick. In our last, what, minute? Well, we may go a tiny bit over. We definitely did last time. It's not the end of the world. So once again, if we're shading on white, I like using these blue tones. We're just going to do sort of the same deal we did, but I'm going to really make sure that these look like they curve and that they pop. Add a little more to that one. Right. And then if we're doing that, I guess fine. I'll grab the skin tone, I'll make it a little bit grayer, and we'll add just the tiniest, we'll try some undershading on the eyebrows. We'll see if that ends up being distracting. And I'll add it over this one just to make it clear that it is in shadow. It doesn't need it, but it, like, I think it contributes a little bit. It's fine. I'm going to show up. That's not a face detail. We can go ahead and add it to these ones too, because they're in shadow. Because, you know, why not? Adds a little definition. A little volume, which is never bad to have when you're doing 2D art and trying to make it look a little more realistic. I guess it's bad to have if you do it wrong. That would be bad. But this whole thing should be shaded, shouldn't it? Yeah. Okay. And I think that's going to be it for tonight. We got a little further than I expected. I didn't think we'd get through all the shading. Flats took longer than I thought, but then most of the shading was quicker. We'll see how it looks in the morning. Well, I guess it'll be the evening again on Thursday, same time, 8 p.m. to 10 Central Time. Yeah, we may end up tweaking this a little bit. I'm sure I'll have some stuff I want to tweak. But the main thing is these hair layers. Because we've got this front hair layer, which is important, obviously, for a lot of reasons. Because when we remove it, you see the nightmares within. And this back hair layer, which is also really important. Although this actually is an interesting hairstyle in its own right. But it's not the one we need. And the hair silhouette needs a little work too. Like most of it's good. We've got some kind of consistent size and shape. This one's a little odd, but it fits in well. This one's a little lumpy, but it works. But this piece is way too detailed and sharp compared to everything else, so I'm going to have to fix that. And then these pieces are way too undefined and kind of weird. They make sense with the sketch layer, and we'll give them better definition with the sketch layer, or once we add shading, and maybe sharpen these off a little bit. But we'll look at that well, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day off, but Thursday. So we will be back again on Thursday, same time, same place. I guess I will hopefully see you then. Until next time. Unless anyone has a raid suggestion. I'm still looking for raid suggestions. So if there's someone I ought to raid, like, by all means, throw an idea in the chat. I may check real quick, see who's live. It is a 50-50 chance which side this new window opens in. Hey, okay, it's not live on stream. Okay, let's see who's going, and if there's someone live right now that I want to raid, then I will. But otherwise, I don't think I'm not seeing anyone I recognize. No Twitch. I'm not raiding one of the like 3 giant ones. Much as I enjoy Captain Sparkle's content, also not really fitting with drawing. So I'll just tell y'all to go check out Drawfee sometime. Maybe I can host them. I wonder if that's a thing I can do, even if they're not live. Their humor is a tad less family-friendly than the stuff we do here, I'll admit. But it's still entertaining, and they're definitely much more skilled artists than I am as of yet. So one day maybe I'll catch up, but that's only if they stop getting better themselves. But yeah, we'll see. We will see on that. Come on, let's see. Stream manager, is that the one I'm looking for? Not manage goals, not raid. Where is host? Sorry, once again, this is week 3 of this. We still haven't quite figured out all the details. So we could do Drawfee if they're live. I guess they're not. Okay. Then I'm just going to wrap us up here. We will come back next time, and we will finish this one up. I'm pretty confident we'll actually finish it up this time. So then I will see you then. Have a good one, y'all.